Well, welcome, friends. I have some special guests with me today, Donna and Rob, and I'm going to let them introduce themselves to you and tell you a little bit about who they are and their background. So welcome, Donna and Rob.
Thank you so much, Kay. It's really great to be here and to see you again. Yes, we are Rob and Donna Ernest, and we have a business that we call Virtual Stratovations, which Stratovations is not really a word. We just kind of made it up. So it kind of symbols that strategy and innovation meet in the virtual world. So Virtual Stratovations. But our website is Strategy for Ministry. And so that's what we're all about. We want to help, especially small churches, with reaching their mission field, and just really excited to be starting out on that venture and be able to help with podcasting and social media and things like that. So do you have anything else to add to that?
Well, kind of give you a little background. We didn't just jump into this not knowing anything about what we were doing. We did know a little bit about what we were doing. I have a radio TV degree from Arkansas State University and spent 36 years in the broadcasting industry before going full-time into the ministry about 10 or 11 years ago. So, and my dad was a full-time pastor for 20 years. So we have the broadcasting and the pastoral background. Donna is administrative assistant and is working in the virtual world now. So she has that background. So that's kind of where we are these days.
We were kind of forced into it, though. We were drawn into the virtual world back in March of 2020, like everyone else.
Like everyone else, right? So true. So true. So it's a really interesting intersection where all this came from. Your background, Rob, in broadcasting, and then your admin experience, Donna, and then all the church work. It's just all kind of come together, in your love of the small church and wanting to support ministry. So I love where all of that has kind of come together. And then your new word that you've made up, Stratovations, strategy and innovation. So that in itself tells you how innovative you are, that we're making up words as well.
Yeah, don't try to look that up. It's not in the dictionary in your yet. Maybe it will be.
It will be soon.
I'm sure. Sure. So your business is called Virtual Stratovations. Your website is strategyforministry.com. So tell us a little bit about the services that you offer. And specifically, I know that your niche is the small church because they don't normally have the staff to provide some of the services in-house, which I know is where your heart is. So tell us a little bit about it.
We first started doing podcast editing because of Rob's background and all of his experience. That was just a natural thing for us to do. We felt that podcasting is the new medium for younger generations. That's where they get their information, and that's where they go for their spiritual needs as well. So to be able to get churches started with podcasting and doing the editing for them if they can't do it themselves, but we're very happy to show them how to do it themselves. And then recently we added social media content, specifically Facebook. It seems to be the most popular still. So we're focusing a lot on daily posts to Facebook for small churches, and then also offering some worship elements and some slides and things like that. And because they really don't, small churches do not have the staff for that sort of thing, and it falls on the pastor to do. So we would like to see pastors doing what they do best and leave the social media to someone else.
Yeah, we kind of know that that feeling when it's left to one person or maybe two to try to fill all these niches, especially in social media, and then as we've had to pull back into the virtual world. Also, the pastor's wife kind of becomes the camera operator and the IT director and the piano player and the social director and everything. So it has become kind of a natural thing for we had to do it. We did it, and just with the resources that we had. So if we can do it, just about anybody can.
Anybody can do it.
That's great. That's great. So we hope that we are coming to the other end of this pandemic. Hope and pray that it's getting close here. So thinking about, in particular, the small churches, what do you think are those greatest opportunities as we are hopefully emerging into this really a new context?
Absolutely, it is. And we feel that every church now is a new start, because every church really has to relaunch. And I know you talked about this in your book, Being the Church in the Post-Pandemic World, where small churches are really on a level playing field, if you will. With large churches, the mission field is the same in the virtual world, and they have the same opportunity to reach those people that might not ever, and probably will never, come to their church. So we just see that as a fantastic opportunity.
Yeah, the pastor and whomever is making the decisions at the small churches now has basically had to become aware of the digital world. So, and I think that barrier may have come down. Folks aren't quite as scared about it anymore and have seen other folks do it. So yeah, it's the small churches are definitely now having to be on a level playing field, and found out that they can be in many ways.
Yeah. And you know, that the really slick productions, you know, that were kind of the expectation, is not really the kind of thing that people are looking for, especially even our younger generations. You know, the really authentic, bring me into your living room conversation feel is really what people are looking for. And that's so much easier to do and makes it so much more attainable for, like you say, anyone.
Right.
Absolutely.
One
you
of
want to
the
tell about our first?
Well, I was
Okay.
going to do that.
All
Right.
right.
It's like we've been married or something. We know each other's thoughts. But one of our first ventures into the live world was we did the Easter sunrise service. We did it from Perry Lake on our pontoon boat with this phone right here. And it was we had never been out on the lake that early in the morning before. It was dark and windy. And
We had a little flashlight.
Had a little chilly, and we had a little flashlight, and we got out in the boat and hoping we're going to hit a stump or something, you know, on our way out. Yeah. And we made it out to where we kind of wanted to be, and faced east, and we had a great service. It came off very well, and we did it live from the lake, and that little broadcast, we don't know exactly how many it reached, but Facebook ticker had it at close to 3,000 views. And you know, we're just thinking, wow, what we didn't do anything much. We just took a phone out to the lake and played some songs on the guitar, and talked about Jesus and watched the sunrise. So it was an awesome thing to have, but it was one of the most rewarding experiences for us. And we found out later for those who were watching. So we still get folks talking about that one little sunrise service we had. It was about 30 minutes, and it came off very nice just with a cell phone, and it was awesome.
I mean, it really does speak to what people are looking for. It's just those real life, meaningful moments. You know, it's not about the lights and the perfect music with the full band, and it's just those sunrises and sunsets and the acoustic guitar and those real life moments. That's beautiful. That's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that story. It so speaks to being attainable. I mean, it was a cell phone. You had no special equipment. You just had to make sure your cell phone was charged, right?
No electricity.
No electricity. That's right. That's right. Oh my gosh. So we all know that churches have limited resources. And, we always say, oh, churches have limited, small churches, but every church has limited resources. I mean, any organization has limited resources. So where do you think those key areas are that we should be leveraging in small churches in order to have the most missionally focused impact? I mean, where are our most high impact areas? Like, where can we get the biggest bang for our buck?
Well, I would say we aren't as limited as we think we are. Yeah. We have a lot of resources, just like we were talking about with the broadcast from the lake. When we first had to go virtual, I mean, we found out on a Wednesday that we were not going to be able to have church on Sunday. And we grabbed the cell phone and we used what we had and used the talents that we had. And I think that churches especially small churches, may sell themselves short if they would just take an inventory of, the people, the gifts, the talents. They might find that they're really not so limited. But I would say that in the emerging, as you say, post-pandemic church, I think our focus does need to be on the digital world. We need to have some presence there and not forget those that still gather. I mean, that's our core, that's our family, that's our community. But we need to have some sort of presence in the digital world and devote some of our resources to that because it's really a mission field.
And I think what we've got to remember is that the mission hasn't really changed. It's the delivery system that that is changing. And we've to bear that in mind, but the mission is still the same as far as we're concerned, is to make disciples of Christ for the transformation of the world. So that's still our mission. But we've got to we roll with it and roll with what we have. And like Donna said, I think a lot of especially small churches might sell themselves short on exactly how much talent is in the local congregation, in the local community, in the church. You may have some microphones and cameras sitting around that you don't know about. A flat screen TV these days is very cheap. The technology is readily at hand, and I bet you if you went and found a teenager somewhere that you might have in the congregation, he or she could show you exactly how to get online and on the air pretty easily and keep you there. So I think we sometimes we make excuses and run around opportunities and don't see them as opportunities. We sometimes see them as excuses. But I think a lot of our small congregations are very talented, and all they need to do is just ask the questions, and I'll bet you they could come up with the right answers.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it wasn't that many years ago that some of this equipment was so expensive, and it has really come down in price, and some of the things, like the phone again, are things we already have. And we just haven't seen them to be able to be used in the ways to take us online. So are you seeing one maybe key area that in particular churches are maybe struggling with that you might have a suggestion to offer to maybe kind of overcome that common struggle?
It's not a new struggle, in my opinion, over the past, even 10 to 20, 30 years. It's the paradigm shift. I think that we as churches or organized congregations, organized denominations, must make from getting backsides in the pews to just taking Jesus to the people. Instead of we need to go get people and bring them into the church, is we need to take the church out to the people. And we'll be just fine if none of those people come back to our church. That's kind of where we are now. We've reached out with social media. We've reached out with YouTube and Facebook and such. And a lot of folks are saying, well, these folks now need to come into our buildings. No, they don't.
Yeah.
They don't need to. They don't have to. As long as we reach them with the message of Jesus Christ, that's fine. That'll take care of itself. And I've always been of the opinion, if we reach people with the message of Jesus Christ, we don't have to worry about backsides in the pews or money in the church treasury or whatever. That will take care of itself. And I think we're still struggling with that paradigm shift, is that we'll be fine. We'll be more than fine if we just take the message of Jesus Christ to the people, however we can get it to them. They don't have to come back to our church. If you just look at Luke chapter 10, I'll preach just a little bit. Luke chapter 10. Luke chapter 10,
Hey,
Jesus,
go for it.
Christ sent the disciples out, 70 or 72, depending on your translation, and said, go, don't take any extra money, don't take any extra shoes, don't take an extra coat, stay where they put you, eat what they give you to eat. And then they came back, and you know what? They didn't bring anybody with them to go to church, to come back to Jesus' church. They took the message of Christ to the people where they were, and then they came back and they talked about it. Then they did it again and again and again and again. So I think that's the paradigm shift that we're in. And maybe this was a big lesson for us, to learn. It says, yes, we can do this without having a church building. We can do this. And folks don't have to come to our church building to receive the message of Jesus Christ.
Yeah, I think Jesus was kind of our first lesson in what a movement looks like. Yeah. And then I think our founder, Wesley, kind of showed us again what a movement looked like of laity. And I think we're getting that lesson again if we were to learn it. I've gone to saying, we've become settlers in pews, and we've lost our pioneering ways.
Exactly. Ooh, that's good.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. With the expectation, like you said, of come to us, put your bottom in the pew and your buck in the plate. And rather than going out, we did learn we no longer really need buildings, right? Jesus didn't have buildings, right? Yeah. He turned over some tables and some temples, though, but he didn't really tell us to go out and build buildings. He told us to go out and make disciples.
Right.
And so I was really hoping, like you, Rob, that was going to be a big takeaway from the pandemic, is to loosen our grip. If we can't give up our grip, at least loosen our grip on our buildings, that this would teach us that, if nothing else. Right.
Well, we have found out that we can actually reach more people this way than we ever could with requiring them to come to our buildings and hear what we have to offer.
Yeah. And the other thing that I've really noticed is that so much of what we did is we took that 60-minute experience of what we were doing in the building, and we just replicated it online. And we know that what you experience online is not the way you experience it in the room necessarily, without some different camera shots. That one camera app on the balcony, watching from 60 or 100 feet away makes you feel like an observer instead of an experiential situation. And so what we're finding too is that if we were to just record and then I'm going to say chop it up. That doesn't sound very nice though, but take those key pieces and make them more conversational and put nuggets out there instead of thinking we've got to put that whole 1 hour experience, because we're dealing with we're trying to reach unchurched people that don't have that 1 hour experience of church anyway. So we're trying to create an experience for someone that don't have that expectation of that experience, and some sort of shortened message that could be very contextual to meet a felt need is going to be able to connect with them much more so than this 1 hour experience from a 100-foot view, right? And Barna did an experiment. I'm not sure if you're familiar with this or not, but I find it fascinating. They were running ads around like putting questions out there about, are you feeling lonely, or have you experienced depression, or as a result of the pandemic. And then they were connecting churches in strategic areas that were connecting those messages to those questions. And that's how they were reaching new people, not like come to church, but again, with messages of hope, with prayer partners, with small groups, like support groups. And it's like, well, yes. I mean,
yeah.
And it wasn't like, let's put a 1 hour experience out there. It was meeting people where they were.
Exactly.
Absolutely. And that's why I'm a big proponent of Facebook groups. If you're going to have a podcast for your church, if you're going to put your sermons online, point people to a Facebook group where they can interact, where they can ask questions, where you can form those relationships, because you're going to have to form relationships online now. If you're going to have any kind of effect in the digital world.
Yes.
And so I think things like that, asking questions on social media, a lot of the posts that we do are just for fun, things like, what's your favorite hymn? Or, is it okay to tell a little lie to save someone's feelings? Things like that people resonate with, or they have an answer, they want to interact. And so I think that's a real important part of what we're trying to do too.
As we've learned through the years, or maybe we haven't, it's all about relationships. And these are new relationship builders that we've got to take it into consideration. Folks still want to have relationships. They might not want to be as close to each other as we once were. Maybe we'll get back to that soon, but the relationships are still important.
Well, and you make a really good point there too. Not as close because of the pandemic, but I don't think we get the, the opportunity as the church anymore, just because of our culture. But in our online world, we have a better chance, because people can be, they can reach out in anonymous ways. They don't have to slide into the back pew, right? They can check us out in ways that are much less threatening than to come into our building. So we are much more approachable in the online world too.
And if folks want to interact, they may.
Exactly. But we have to offer ways to do that. And I think that's where churches sometimes miss it too, is we just like put things out there without a way to interact. Yeah. So there's always a need for how to be able to contact or to put out some sort of information, and maybe be out there for conversation, say, and we're going to come back and have a conversation about this at 6:00 tonight if you want to join us. So,
yeah.
It's all about relationships. So true. So true. So we've talked a lot about struggles, but what brings you the most hope for the church? And since we've been talking about the small church, how about specifically for the small church? What gives you hope for the future?
Well, we've been involved in small churches all our lives. We grew up in small churches. That was just our family growing up. And I know Rob, his dad pastored a lot of small churches, and we just feel like small churches get it when it comes to congregational care. And we still have the greatest message ever for the entire world, and that includes the digital world. And I just feel that when it comes to forming those relationships, that small churches are really good at that. And so that gives me a lot of hope, besides the fact that, the hope of Christ that we have, it's always there. So.
Mhm.
And I hate to say this being a pastor, but small churches can operate without a pastor very well. Thank you very much. And most of them have from time to time, either in sometimes pastors in a quarter time or halftime situations where they're not able to surround themselves with the flock all the time, and the small churches have been doing this for years. They know how to take care of themselves. They know how to operate the church. They know how to put together a funeral lunch. They know how to do all these things. They know how to create a community. They've been doing it for 100 years or so. So it's amazing what the small church can do. And what the message we've been putting out for the past a couple of years at least is when folks say, well, what's going to happen to the church? And our message has always been, well, God's going to have God's church. It's God's church, and it may not look anything like it looked 10 years ago, 5 years ago, or a year and a half ago, but God's going to have God's church, and it's going to be fine. So I'm not worried about God's church, and I don't think God is either. So what we need to do is try to figure out the best way that we could come alongside God in this mission that God is allowing us to work in alongside Jesus Christ. So I'm not worried about God's church at all, one iota, because God's going to have God's church.
God's got this.
Exactly.
Yeah. It's kind of like when the pruning press came along, right? Things changed. It was a different method. And so now we have an additional, not a different, but an additional method to reach people. And so what a phenomenal opportunity that we get to be a part of is seeing this new thing come to life. And it's a privilege and an honor, right? To be able to be the pioneers, if you will, to bring that into life and to experiment and to see what God's up to.
That's a great comparison, because after the printing press, look at how many people were exposed to the word of God then that had not been able to before. So now, Gutenberg was, I'm sure, proud, but we have that same opportunity. That's a great comparison.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's where all the unchurched people are hanging out. So, it's a really great harvest, don't you think?
Exactly.
Oh, yeah. Billions of people.
You bet. So, any closing thoughts that you'd like to share with our listeners?
Well, I just like to think about what we're doing as a ministry, of course, but also as a partnership with small churches. And I was in a webinar today, and I'm going to steal the devotion because I thought it was so appropriate. He talked about Jonathan and his armor bearer in, I think the scripture's in 1 Samuel, maybe. But they were going against the Philistines, and Jonathan says, I'm going to go, and God's going to go with us, and we're going to fight the Philistines. And the armor bearer said, well, do whatever you have to do. I'm right behind you. So we I think of us as the armor bearers for small churches, and wherever you want to go, we'd like to go with you. We'd like to partner with you, however that will look. But it's just a great adventure, and we're just excited to be here in such a time as this. Yeah.
Rob, anything, closing words for you? You're a pastor. Surely you have closing words.
You have a benediction.
Yeah, we could. God bless you and keep you. Yeah, and I think I just reiterate what Donna said. I know it seems maybe overwhelming at times. It may seem frustrating at times, especially for the the pastor who does not have a staff, or maybe the staff can't work now. But it doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be overwhelming. It doesn't have to be frustrating, because there are folks who want to come alongside you and help you. And we would love to help with that. So don't feel like the Lone Ranger out there. There is help, there is assistance. So feel free to get in touch.
Well, I just want to thank both of you for your heart for the small church. I know that many small churches have felt kind of laid aside during this time, that they just haven't been able to keep up, and felt kind of ran over by the large churches with the staff and the production crew and all the equipment and that kind of thing. And so just thank you for your ministry, but for looking out for the small church and to find ways to equip, because there are so many communities that are dependent on the small church, especially those small churches that are that heartbeat of the community, that are a part of that woven tapestry of the community. And those are the churches that we just really need to make sure that we kind of bolster up and make sure that they survive, because they are such an important and strategic part of those communities. And so I just appreciate who you all are and what you're trying to do for the small churches. So be sure to reach out to Donna and Rob at strategyforministry.com as they're here to support dynamic leaders in ministry. Thank you so much for joining us. Appreciate who you are and your ministry.
Thanks, Kay.
Thank you. We appreciate you so much.